Hauswirth will be in a bit later to do that. I'm Randy Tobler, along with Stephanie Bell.
Good morning.
John Marsh over there.
Yes, sir.
And producer Hannah, who was here late last night.
Hello.
Manning.
Good morning.
Not manning. I can't say manning. Womaning the controls.
You can say manning.
Womaning the controls.
No,
Personing.
Oh, boy.
I think I'd rather you say manning.
Do you prefer manning, womaning, or personing?
Manning. It sounds the most normal.
Okay.
So I'm going to go with that one.
At any rate, you were here manning the controls for the Haley DeSantis debate that we broadcast on both stations. And at the same time, wisely, Donald Trump was holding forth at a town hall for Fox. Fox is dumb as a fox when they do their scheduling, huh?
Well, dumb, or are they trying to be clever?
That's what I mean. No, they're dumb as a fox.
Well,
that's what I mean.
The thing that I had to laugh at, of course, CNN hosted the other candidates in their debate, which only Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis ended up meeting CNN's requirements to be on the stage. They were sure to mention several times, actually, that Donald Trump qualified for tonight's debate, but opted out of appearing, basically. And they mentioned that a lot of times.
Yeah,
More or less than DeSantisLies.com.
Maybe not that many times.
And, of course, Kellyanne, I heard her on a Fox show yesterday afternoon saying, hey, he's smart. Like it or not like it, strategically or tactically, he's smart not to show up. Why does he need to show up? He's focused on the general because it's already a done deal. We'll see whether it's a done deal. Iowa caucuses on Monday, so we'll see how that goes. We'll be interested in the weather, of course, in the Midwest, which, even though it's a couple degrees latitude north, it often is mirrored here in our area. Brian Hauswirth joins us now. The latest on weather. After we let you know that we're going to be talking about economy. 25% of you or someone you know are in the gig economy, and Biden's Labor Department is making an assault on the gig economy. Independent workers. If you're a gig worker, they're making an assault on you. Patrice Onwuka will join us from Independent Women's Forum at 6:35. Lincoln Hough, the budget director at the Senate, or the budget committee guy.
Appropriations chair.
I thought he was the budget.
No,
he's appropriations.
It is a technical thing. You're absolutely.
Well, he controls the budget.
They call it the Senate Appropriations Committee. In the House, it's the Budget Committee. Essentially, it's the same thing. They have a formal name, though, but it's appropriations.
Tomato.
Yeah, tomato. Yeah, let's call the whole thing off. He'll be here at 7:35, and then Travis Fitzwater at 8:10. So a busy show all day. And we may get the latest from Tony Lupo if he checks in a little bit later. That'll be a little bonus on top of the cake this morning. What's the latest on weather?
All right, here's the situation on weather, and do want to point out, too, what Hannah said. I want to repeat that. Very important. The reason Jake Tapper, by the way, said that repeatedly and did the right thing, that former President Trump was invited. Had they not, people would say it was unfair that he wasn't on the stage. So that what they're doing is they're showing that they did invite him. So that's certainly appropriate for them to do that. Of course, it's up to the former president whether or not to participate. Here's our situation with weather. It is changed. When I left here yesterday at noon, we were projected to receive 2 to 8 inches of snow, with snow starting at about 3 tomorrow morning. At this point, this is probably going to change right now. We're now looking at about 1 to 3 inches in the bulk of our area, but to our northern counties, they're going to receive more than that. The heaviest snow is going to be in northeast Missouri. Latest projection from Chris Kimball, a meteorologist at the National Weather Service, and their chief meteorologist in the morning, Melissa Bird, have the snow starting at this point in mid-Missouri at about 9 tomorrow morning. Now, that's subject to change. We also are expected to receive some thunderstorms in the area tonight. That is not.
Did you say thunderstorms?
Correct, but not severe. But we're going to hear thunder overnight, which is very unusual.
What about thunder snow? Remember, we had that a couple of years ago.
We did, and
we asked Tony about that the other day.
And it is possible we'll see some thunder snow, but the timing on that, Stephanie, is the snow shouldn't start falling till about 9, so it's possible. It is possible. But that is the situation right now. There's no ice, but there's going to bring very cold temperatures behind this. We'll be approaching 0 this weekend behind it. But that's what it is, 1 to 3. John Ross at Channel 17, KMIZ is also going with 1 to 3. His timing, though, is a little different. He's got the snow coming in earlier. Again, the models will change, so be prepared. You don't want to get stuck tomorrow where you can't get to work.
Now, Randy, you had a
For
chance.
the majority, we're not under an advisory or anything, right, Brian?
Not yet at the bulk. If we were, and if we were an advisory, it's not going to be till later today. But at this point, no one is at this point.
I experienced the power outage in northeast Missouri.
Yeah.
We still have a place that we're trying to sell up in Memphis, and there was power out there for a while, not as bad. But in Macon, where the farm is, I was up there yesterday. It was dark until dark. I mean, it was pretty. The lights came on roughly at dusk yesterday, at least in our neighborhood. And I mean, there was 8 inches of snow non-drifted. I had to fight through drifts. 10, 12, 18 inches. I mean, it was a big deal.
And that shows again that basically the forecast was close, and we were very fortunate in mid-Missouri. I want to prove a point here. Macon, by the way, when we went on the air and we had at 6:35, 24 hours ago, we had Mike Sutherland on, and there were 1,500 people without power. I checked last night. Hannah and I were here with the debate, and I was working on snow and stuff, but they were, when I left here, about 500 people without power. They're down to 32. So those crews have worked in terrible conditions. They've essentially put about 1,500 people, actually more than that, about 1,800 people in the last 24 hours. But for the 32 people without, and there's still quite a few in some of the other counties that don't have power, it's an issue. But Macon County was hardest hit, and those crews have been working in ice, snow, frigid temperatures. In that area, this is my worry, Randy. This is my worry. That area in Macon and Memphis where you're at is going to get the bulk of this storm tomorrow. And the Cardinal Caravan is scheduled to start tomorrow in Hannibal at noon. Yeah. Heaviest snow is going to be in that area. I hope that doesn't affect that. But we very well, I don't want to scare people, we very well could see power outages again tomorrow in the same area.
A big shout out to the linemen and women that are out there, because I can tell you, I had to dig in. I probably did, an hour of snow shoveling total just to get into my tractor, to do the blades so I could get in with my truck to do what I needed to do to sort of semi-winterize things, because we're going to be in sub-zero temperature for several days coming up here. And I mean, I am exhausted. Just sitting on a tractor and doing a little snow shoveling. Can you imagine these people hanging off a pole all day and maybe getting a few hours of sleep and then coming back and doing it again? What are you laughing at? Producer Hannah.
I'm laughing at two things.
Did you see the picture I sent you?
No, I did not receive a photo from you.
I texted you a picture.
Of what? I'd be curious what it is.
Of my Big A truck.
Oh, that.
No, I was laughing because yesterday on the show, you were talking about medical advice and how if you are not used to doing a lot of physical activity, you probably should reconsider shoveling your driveway and things like that.
But I'm back in the pool and I'm swimming and everything's good.
Well,
so I figure that's a stress test.
Yeah.
I mean, it's either a widowmaker or if he gets chest pain and stuff, well, then you stop. So one or the other. It's all good. It's all good.
But you got to be careful.
I just sent you that.
Got to be careful shoveling. But no, shoveling is a big deal.
We shovel in the studio every day.
And it's
pretty deep.
I did the back. If you're going to be shoveling, guys and gals, take care of your back. Take your time. Pick the shovel up, then twist, then empty the shovel. Don't twist and then empty.
We need to do a video tutorial on how
just
to do
pay
this.
the neighbor kid.
And you talked
Or
about
that.
you talked about the linemen and line women.
Oh, man.
There's a story up 939theeagle.com and KWS.com, and I encourage everybody to take a look at this picture I put up of this lineman in Macon County. He's at the top of a snow and ice covered pole trying to restore power, and the lines have been cut. And I don't know what they're paying that guy that's on our homepage on our two websites. Whatever it is not enough. That is extremely, I can't tell you how dangerous that is to be up there in that kind of weather and more coming in. And kudos to that lineman who lives in the Macon area.
Yeah.
In fact, he's probably going to be one of my winners of the week tomorrow.
And, people came in from, what didn't you say, down from Quiver River? And, I mean, all points southwest and east.
There are linemen and women from the Boot Heel that are up in Randolph County in our listening area. There are linemen from everywhere because they'll be leaving today. A lot of them are back on power, but that's a pretty amazing turnaround to have that many people without power to get it turned on.
So we have women refereeing NFL sports. Are there college women referees
Yes.
as well? Okay. How many women linemen are there? How many line women are there? I'm curious.
Mike Sutherland and Caleb Jones would have that number, but the number has increased. I know when Eli Drinkwitz, before the season, he spoke to the co-ops and talked to the linemen. Eli Drinkwitz's brother-in-law is a lineman in Arkansas, and there were women in the photo. And they train them right over here by the radio station. There's near the Ameren facility. That's where they do the training on those poles. I mean, it's tough work, but they need linemen and line women because the bulk of those guys and women are older. They're older.
Yeah.
There's a girl they did a story on a while back named Kimberly Bradshaw, who was from Missouri and was State Technical College of Missouri and Lynn's first female lineman.
There you go.
Graduate from over there.
That's right.
Okay, so plus there's always a plug handy for the blow dryer if you're a line woman.
No, they do a great job.
Say Hannah's facial expressions are priceless. She's like rolling the eyes emoji in life, real life here.
I love it because I practice, my law practice is in a lot of male-dominated industries. So some of the conferences I go to, when like the line for the men's room is out the door and I just breeze right through, I love it.
Which is opposite most sporting events and theatrical presentations, right? When the women...
If you're a lineman, all you have to do is go behind a tree, though. So there's no lines in the woods.
I Googled what the correct term for female line workers are.
And?
Because the term lime women was giving me the ick. Okay. It just was making me roll my eyes.
that.
I didn't like it.
Okay. And what's the word?
It says that a lot of the industry is transitioning from using the term linemen to line workers.
Yeah, that's pretty common.
Yeah, line workers.
Line workers.
Well, but isn't a line worker, that would be confused with someone putting a steering wheel on a car, right? You work on a line. It's too
on the
generic.
assembly line, huh?
It's too generic. I don't know. All right, well, we got to step aside because there's a lot going on. Circus in D.C., there's the debates last night, and I'm sure Stephanie Bell will cover that in the Daily D.C. Rundown coming up here on Wake Up
And you and I both know it. She's not up to this.
Christie then talked about what he perceived was the state of mind of Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, perhaps after learning the loudest voice against former President Trump was dropping out.
DeSantis called me, petrified.
The Iowa caucuses, without Christie, are next Monday. Gernal Scott, Fox News.
Lots of fireworks in D.C. and around the political scene yesterday. The daily D.C. rundown with Stephanie is now.
It was wild. So we heard from Chris Christie that he is not running. Does anyone care? Not really. But he does have, not an insignificant portion of the non-Trump vote, which is still very small. So the question is, who do his votes go toward, even though he thinks Nikki Haley is going to, quote, get smoked, which I think everyone but Trump is going to get smoked. But I think the consensus is more of his voters will go toward Haley than to DeSantis. Could there be some sort of consolidation around a non-Trump vote? Potentially. Is it enough? I don't think so. Randy?
I don't know. I think depending on how she does, depending on how each of them do respectively, DeSantis in Iowa and Haley in New Hampshire is going to determine if whoever gets those votes, that could give them enough momentum to either make it a race, which is very unlikely, or to be a VP challenge here.
And
well, what are the numbers in Iowa? Trump at 50-some%, and those two in the teens, in the polls, if you believe them.
Yeah, I mean, Trump has just a huge lead, and he is behaving as though he has already won the primary. And so he had his own TV appearance last night, and rather than talking about and kind of batting back and forth, he didn't announce any new websites like Nikki Haley. But he, he's not even worried about. I mean, he's not talking about Nikki Haley or about DeSantis. He is talking like he's already in the general election.
Talking about a VP pick.
He certainly is, and then. And his ads are more looking like their general election ads. You can tell he's not even concerned about the primary. And Congress is kind of backing him up on this. Apparently, Speaker Johnson was asked, hey, have you talked to the leader of your party about the budget that you're proposing? And he said, yeah, I'm going to call him. I mean, Johnson's not calling Nikki Haley, and he's not calling Ron DeSantis. So there was a lot of fireworks in Congress yesterday. Not only are the Freedom Caucus folks completely, fired up about the potential of a continuing resolution to get past that spending deadline, but there were also Hunter Biden was in the House causing a ruckus, and so it's a mess.
And there's ongoing talks about Ukraine-Israel funding and tying that to border control. I don't think much progress is being made. We hear about it, but I don't think any substantive stuff happening.
Not that we are seeing. So, I think we're at a race between the Missouri Senate and the Congress on who can be more of a, it's just a lot of drama. And yeah, is anything getting done? There's a lot of fighting. But are we going to make substantive changes on spending or on conservative values or any of that on the federal level? I don't see it. And, I want to chase after Hunter Biden, but in the grand scheme of things, is that what we should be doing right now when we've got all of these other very important and potentially, international conflicts?
Can we all agree, based on Hunter's behavior, that drugs fry your brain? Can we just agree? Or is it people with fried brains that use drugs?
What's that commercial? It's like, don't do drugs, or there was some big... Anyway.
Here's your brain. Here's your brain.
Yeah, here's your brain on
fried
drugs.
Egg in a pan.
That's where I was going. John, can we just put his face on a commercial?
Yeah, I mean, it's really tragic to see that kind of
I wish he would have
behavior.
gotten up and testified and taken questions while he was there if he had the guts to show up, stick around.
And, of course, the Democrats were, like, all over it saying, well, go ahead. What do you mean contempt? He's here. Listen to his testimony. I mean, this is a farce.
And then he wasn't there.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was not there in a hurry. But, of course, he's always on the mic on his own accord. But Congress did vote to bring contempt charges against Hunter Biden.
And one of the How you doing, Patrice?
I'm great. Good morning and Happy New Year.
Hey, same to you. Now, the news on the job front, when you unpack it, Patrice, is that more and more of the so-called new jobs that Joe Biden is personally creating, are part-time work. And the freelance work is up and up and up in America. There's more gig workers than ever. And Biden and his cronies in the union movement are doing everything they can to undo and unravel the freelance economy. Tell us about it.
Absolutely. So this Tuesday, Biden's Department of Labor finalized a devastating new regulation on those people who can be independent contractors. These are people who are not W-2 employees of a company. In essence, they're their own small businesses. They're entrepreneurs. They get 1099 work. And this could be like a host of occupations, everything from typists and marketing professionals, truck drivers, Uber drivers, transcription. I mean, the list goes on of the people who in this economy choose flexibility, choose to be their own boss, choose that freedom to decide to take on as many clients as they want and to work around the priorities that are important for them, whether that's raising a family, taking care of an aging parent or a sick spouse, or even their own health conditions. But these people cannot be unionized, and that is what gets President Biden and his Department of Labor secretary under their skin. So they're trying to force everyone into a traditional W-2 employment situation, which can be unionized.
So tell me more about exactly what this regulation is going to do to gig workers. I know we've got a lot right here in mid-Missouri. As a small business owner myself, I rely on them and use them in my own business. I know they're especially, I see it a lot in like virtual assistants and remote assistants.
Yes.
So how are those people going to be affected exactly?
So what the new rule does is that it changes the definition of who qualifies as an independent contractor. The past two administrations, frankly, three have been going back and forth in how you'd make that determination. And what the Biden administration did is pretty much say you have to satisfy about 6 different categories or classifications to determine whether you are truly an independent contractor or you should be classified as an employee. The Trump administration, their rule was far simpler and certainly made it easier for someone to retain that independent contractor status. So this rule is going to take effect on March 11th, and we're expecting lawsuits to happen. We already have 2 different members of Congress, one in the House and one in the Senate, Representative Kevin Kiley of California and Senator Bill Cassidy of Louisiana. They are going to introduce a Congressional Review Act to overturn this regulation. But what this means is a lot of employers, businesses that contract out work. You talk about virtual assistants, contract out marketing, accounting to professionals. They may have to determine whether or not these individuals should be brought on as full employees, W-2 employees, by satisfying this new, more stringent, more difficult definition. And that's what's devastating. We saw what happened when California implemented something that was very similar, a little bit more strict, and hundreds of thousands of independent contractors in the state lost incomes, lost gigs, lost contracts immediately. And their businesses have not survived. And so we're scared that we're very concerned that this is nationalizing what California's bad idea did to its state, its labor force of independent contractors, and making this federal policy.
Patrice Onwuka from Independent Women's Forum joins us on Wake Up Mid-Missouri this morning.
Patrice, wasn't it a couple years ago? Was it New York or New Jersey who went after Uber on this same kind of thing over what they claimed were unpaid employment taxes and all?
Yeah, we have seen a lot of blue states start to do this. What they're claiming is that independent contractors are misclassified and should actually be employees. Number one, there is no evidence of widespread misclassification. Number two, this is really an effort to also get at the gig workers, people who are rideshare drivers like for Uber and Lyft, or delivering food through Postmates. And that business model is very much dependent on independent contractors. Now, a driver for Uber is not the same as a coder who works in the Uber business. Those are 2 different types of classifications, but the states and the federal government wants them to be one and the same. That would upend the entire gig economy entirely, all of those business models. But it also would affect so many other independent contractors who do not do gig work and want to be independent, choose to be independent, and frankly, from a freedom perspective, should have the choice to be independent.
Patrice, it seems to me that there's two ways that this administration and previous IRS under different administrations have attacked gig workers, right? The IRS has a classification issue as well. This is a Labor Department issue. But, you know, in the big picture, isn't it funny? The Republican Party used to be labeled as the party of big business, but I can think of no other rule or regulation than the one that is now unleashed on Americans that really now plays into the whole consolidation that we see across all, healthcare, tech, so many industries. Consolidation. This is giving more and more control to larger and larger companies that are able to now, through this is just another piece of the puzzle, to thwart competition. And disruptive competition, because it usually comes from an independent contractor consultant, space, in my opinion.
Well, really, it's undermining the entrepreneurial small business spirit in this country. And you're right. You are hitting on this idea. They will say that, yes, antitrust should be used to break up big tech or break up big companies. But when you pass regulations, whether you're talking about this independent contractor rule or the overtime rule or the joint employer rule, all of which have been coming out of this administration, big businesses can afford to hire a team of lawyers and a team of accountants and compliance officers to afford to figure out how to make it work. But it's the small business person who spends their entire day trying to build their business that doesn't have time to go through this 338-page regulation and figure out whether or not the contractors she employs or she hires are, in fact, should be hired as employees. And frankly, that small business owner probably cannot afford to do that. So you're going to see mass layoffs. You're going to see, the independent contractor workforce diminish significantly. And by the way, 65 million Americans have freelanced in the past year. So we're talking about a lot of people, and it's going to have a devastating impact, which is why it's so important that groups like ours, other groups we're working with, we are supporting the congressional actions that are going to take place, as well as, I'm sure there are going to be lawsuits that are going to be filed to keep this from going into place by March 11th. But folks, if you see headlines saying that this is great news for workers, it is not. Maybe a few workers will feel a little bit more secure, but many more moms, many more disabled workers, many more men and women who choose not to be somebody else's employee, but choose to be their own boss, they are looking down the barrel at something that's going to be devastating.
This is a big deal for women. This is a big deal for women.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
huge deal.
You're exactly right. When I was thinking about virtual assistants, I'm working with someone right now, and she works remotely and has 3 kids and can do it from home on her own time and do these one-off tasks. And it's been great for me. And I'm pretty sure she would say it's been great for her. And so it's sad to hear this is happening. Now, I want to zoom out just a little bit because there's some cases before the Supreme Court this term that talk about federal agency power. And so when you talk about this, coming through in a 300-page regulation, we've seen, more and more getting pushed through these overreaching agencies. So is there anything about the cases that are pending before the Supreme Court now that could potentially rein in some of the agencies taking away our freedoms?
Good point.
Yeah. So we've already seen in the past year the Supreme Court through at least one case say, listen, regulatory overreach, we need to rein that in. What Congress does not expressly grant to a federal agency, then it doesn't mean the agency can kind of take its own will and run with it. Whether you're talking about the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau and some of its regulations, or a lot of these different agencies, and that we're going to see cases hit the Supreme Court this year and lower courts that that will challenge that approach. This is indicative of what happens when you have an agenda that is not bipartisan, that is not for all Americans, but frankly just for special interests. And if it's the independent contractor rule, that's really about supporting big labor and in getting more people unionized, or whether it's in an EPA rule that's really about the environmental groups and ensuring that they have power and say over individual and small businesses' land and resources. It is about helping those special interests. And this is what the Biden administration has really been doing. So we look forward to the courts. We look forward to the Supreme Court really saying no. If Congress, on a bipartisan manner, did not give this rule, this agency, the right to do this, then the agency cannot do it, and hopefully invalidate a lot of the regulations that these agencies have been putting out there.
Well, it's high time that everyone listening, because I imagine every one of you either is or knows or maybe is a mom, dad, brother, sister to a gig worker, get active. Call your congressional office, write letters, stay in tune with what Patrice and the people at Independent Women's Forum are doing and on the Center for Economic Opportunity. And that's all we can do now is just defang this regulatory agency, just one of many that is overreaching. Patrice, thank you so very much for joining us. Hope to keep in touch with you and follow this battle, because it is a battle, and and you're leading the way along with other groups and the great women there at Independent Women's Forum. Thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much. And folks, go to iwf.org.
iwf.org. Thanks much. Have a good So this is a little sound from New York City in an underprivileged area, a school called James Madison. And this is just surreal. You have to pinch yourself. You see videos of earlier this week, children leaving their school to go home and learn remotely. And we've learned what that does to kids learning, so that they can bring 1,500 roughly illegals in that were being housed in a tent city on some field, Bennett Field there. The city people are whining that, well, that's all that the feds would give us. We wanted a military base. We wanted this. We wanted that. And that's all they'd let us use, the feds and states. And this is just outrageous. Now, I don't think it's going to be a long-term deal. It was to try to avoid some storm event that was coming. But, I mean, at what point do the American people, even if you're a dyed-in-the-wool, Biden voter, do you say, no, we can't take this anymore?
Well, and remember when we used to vote in schools like that? I remember I went to elementary school and my parents showed up to Morrow Heights Elementary every time to vote. And, you can't even vote in schools. You got to vote in churches because it's unsafe and it interrupts the learning. But we're just going to take over an entire school now. It makes no sense.
I don't know. John, does this get you this just gets my goat, man. The fact that this is going on, people are observing it, and Biden just keeps doubling down on open borders.
Well, this is a deal, and James Madison is a pretty well-known high school in Brooklyn because I did a little searching. Alums of James Madison, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Chuck Schumer, and Bernie Sanders all went there. So, it sounds like kind of getting a taste of their own medicine in the liberal system there.
Well, I guess they're true to their colors, though, because they're all in favor of lockdowns and,
exactly.
government control anyway.
Send the kids home, long as the illegals don't have to be outside in the tent city.
But there were protests. The parents are up in arms. Of course, the city administrator, he's because he's catching the heat. And you say, well, what does it mean for us? Well, look, I think that we should preempt the things that start on the coasts, whether it's California, whether it's New York. They start on the coast, and ultimately it seems as though if you just zoom out and look at recent history culturally and regulatory and legislatively, it just seems like we have this creeping progressivism. And it's going to be here. And the next thing you know, will it be Columbia? I doubt Jefferson City, but...
Never know.
What's the next? Look, I think at the next city council meeting, I've heard talk that they might have a robust discussion about LGBTQ sanctuary. Well, maybe next thing you know, we're an illegal alien sanctuary city. And then will kids from Rockbridge, from Hickman, will they be sent home because we need to house illegals or homeless because the homeless hotel isn't up yet? You can say that's theoretical and it's hyperbole. I'm not so sure.
I never thought we would send kids without parents' permission to a breakfast drag show.
You're right. That the school board, well, not school board, but school officials participated in the planning.
Yes.
They knew about it.
That seems beyond what I thought Columbia was possible in mid-Missouri. And, so I don't think much would surprise me now.
Now, Stephanie, you were in sunny San Diego when we did the governor's prayer breakfast. But, John, as I think about our interview with David Tyson Smith, it was, I'm glad he sat down with us. But remember when I brought up the fact that in New Hampshire, a couple other states, they've made it illegal. It's a misdemeanor. I forget which degree, but they've made it a significant misdemeanor if if an illegal is driving in their state with a license, in air finger quotes, from another state. And I asked David Tyson Smith, hey, what do you think about something like that in Missouri? Let's just pass that law. And John, tell me if I'm wrong, but what I heard was, well, why would we do that? It hasn't happened yet. We'll address it if it becomes a problem.
And then he rapidly segued into talking about taking away Second Amendment rights from teenagers who are of age.
I think it would behoove legislators in Missouri to get ahead of what will be a drop at the deposit box of your local sanctuary city in St. Louis, Kansas City, or God forbid, Columbia, Missouri. Your favorite illegal from wherever, Arizona, DeSantis. Visit Montana. Beautiful place, yeah?
It is very beautiful.
John Marsh, you've been in Big Sky?
I've been in Wyoming and Idaho. I think I've driven through Montana back in the day.
Hannah, you've been to Big Sky?
I haven't.
We need to you need to lead a tour there to Big Sky for the group.
If we win the lottery, yes. It's a very expensive
high dollar place.
But it was during COVID, and so everything else had gotten canceled, and we went once, and I probably will never go back. But it is a very beautiful place.
It's the Vale of Montana.
We don't all get to lead tour groups on big trips, Randy.
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying, But
my travels have messed with my skincare and hair washing routine, so that is why I have a hat on today.
Do you need to do an everything shower?
I do, but I have a workout scheduled later today, so I'm not going to wash my hair.
Let's unpack that a little bit more. So you wear a hat. Your hair looks beautiful. I'm looking at your hair outside of the cap. It looks like nice, glowing, shiny hair.
That's why you wear a hat.
John, do you understand this?
I just thought she was incognito.
What's the story, Hannah? What's with the...
Well, it's like if your hair is maybe a little oily or something like that, you don't want to mess with it. You just throw on a hat, and the ends still look nice, but you're covering up the problem area.
Mm-hmm.
And the cooties can't get away.
I don't have cooties.
Why are you worried about it? We don't objectify women anymore.
But we're on camera for the whole world to see.
Well, look at the glare on my head breaks the webcam. You got to turn down the contrast. The glare is breaking the CCD chip.
Well, maybe we should get you a ball cap.
I think that hat looks. I like the hat.
The hat.
That hat looks really good. Big Sky.
I tell my wife I love it when she does the ponytail through the back of the hat thing. I think that's a really good look. I like that.
Yep, it is. I like it too. Now my problem is I recently. Hannah's got the hat I gave her on. I'll have to bring one in for everybody.
Hannah's got her hat on too. Look.
Yeah. That's an official Richardson Trolley Company hat.
Heck yeah.
Which I didn't know. I didn't understand the hype around Richardson hats. It's a style of hat that is like very apparently popular.
It's kind of like a trucker style.
But that's a Trolley Company hat that Hannah has on.
Oh, so if you have one of those, that style hat, you have to have a Stanley Cup too. Do they go hand in hand?
And if you've missed the picture of Hannah that I think's posted to our socials of Hannah like hugging the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, I don't know what I was doing.
I would say caressing the Stanley Cup. I mean, it
I've been leaning into the grief I've been getting. I've been making fun of myself at the same time.
Yeah, well.
But I saw that photo and was embarrassed. I said, I've taken it too far.
Brian Hauswirth joins us on Wake Up Mid-Missouri this morning. The whole team's here. Now, lots going on in state news. We have a Democrat who was expelled from the Democrat caucus, Miss Hunziker from the St. Louis County area, right?
She's running. Right?
She's running for governor on the Democrat ticket.
She's from Shrewsbury and a veteran member. She's in her senior, so she was elected in 2016. So she would have come in with Crystal Quaid in Dean Plonker, but it has to do with, and it's kind of complex. John's watched it too. The Democrats were upset with her because of some of the pictures. I think that some of the videos she had taken with some people that
she took photos with Holocaust deniers, and then she also said some really awful things about politicians who had passed, and that she had conspiracy theories about them, and they were just over it with her. Now, she's been kicked out of the caucus, but I think this is a complete disaster for Democrats because she's still going to have a D behind her name on the ballot. She's going to run in the primary against Crystal Quaid, and she the things she keeps saying just keep getting crazier, and Republicans are going to be able to just attribute that to the Missouri Democrat Party. And so the best thing for Democrats, I think their hope was we're going to kick her out of the caucus and hopefully she goes away.
And she said Uno reverse card.
Yeah.
Right.
And plus they moved her chair up to the front towards the flagpole, and but she's going to be closer to the press. They probably would have been better off moving her to the I don't know where, but the bottom line is she's still a House member. She still can vote. She can get up on the floor and speak as long as the speaker calls on her. So who knows? But that'll be interesting.
Is it kind of like elementary school? Like you get the chair closer to the teacher. If you're in trouble, you're kind of in timeout.
Well, I remember Tricia Durgis, who had her own a Republican. She was at one point under 2 federal indictments, as I recall. She was pretty much, not welcomed by the Republicans. She got moved up to the top right-hand corner in that chamber as well. And so did Wiley Price. He had his issues, former Democratic state representative. It seems to, and Rick Raber, who was actually expelled from the chamber, which was extremely unusual. As I recall, he was put up there as well. So that's kind of where they move people. And I don't know if Leader Quaid requested that. Plocker probably would have had to sign off on it. I'm not sure. But the bottom line, her chair has been moved, and she's tweeted that.
More focus on Missouri politics and Missouri legislation. Lincoln Hough will be joining us at 7:35. Of course, he's chair of the Appropriations Committee, Senator Hough. And so we'll be talking with him. And then after that, at 8:10, Travis Fitzwater. Now, in other news and in the category of hypocrisy, we have the Jess Piper story.
Oh, it's beautiful, Randy.
I know. You were thrilled. You're texting me at 12 o'clock a.m. last night. I don't know. That's when I saw it. It's like unbelievable. I hadn't seen this story. Tell us about it, Hannah.
Well, I lovingly/unlovingly refer to Jess Piper as she who shall not be named because I don't want the Twitter wrath that she can bring. She is a former educator. She had a failed run for office. She's really outspoken against being anti-school choice. And she basically, it seems, sits around on Twitter all day and loves to troll everyone.
She's a full-time Twitter troll.
Former candidate for the District 1, which is up in the Maryville and Albany area.
Northwest Missouri.
Northwest. Very,
very Republican. Sam Graves' old House district.
Yeah.
But she got slapped down by the Missouri Ethics Commission yesterday, officially.
Yeah, they found that there was a $30 donation made improperly to her campaign, and she had to pay, $1,000 fine for this measly $30, which that in itself I don't think is a huge deal. It's just the hypocrisy. The libs of TikTok actually tweeted about Jess, which they have 2.7 million followers. It's a huge account. And they found a tweet from September where Jess was trying to say that Sarah Huckabee Sanders did the same thing that Jess just got slapped down for. So a little bit of irony there, a little bit of hypocrisy, but lots of folks are celebrating that Jess got a little slap on the wrist.
Yeah, wasn't she the one with the Dirt Road Democrat podcast that kind of went viral?
Yes. Well, and what she did was she basically took a donation in the name of another. So somebody put a name on it. They I think it's insinuated that she knew that that this money wasn't from the person that was actually named, reported it from that person, and you're not allowed to do that. So I can't hand Randy $30 and then you go give that money and say, give this to Caleb Rowden.
In your behalf without disclosing that.
Yeah, because the money came from me. And so if you're taking money in the name of another, I mean, and there's all sorts of reasons why people would do that, but it is definitely against the campaign finance regulations, and she got popped for it yesterday, and of course looks like a hypocrite. I think, so the Missouri Ethics Commission can really only consider when people file a complaint. Someone had filed a complaint, but I think there's a lot more. I mean, if you dig into her reports, I mean, it's been publicly reported before that she's paying herself thousands upon thousands of dollars out of her campaign committee.
Ooh.
Another thing you're not allowed to do is essentially use your campaign funds for personal use. So it doesn't appear she has a job other than to sit on Twitter. So
and she has a large audience. She has 100,000 plus followers.
Maybe she could become a gig worker in Fannie Willis's operation.
There you go.
Just saying.
But I think,
or in New Jersey.
Yeah.
I don't know that anyone's ever been bold enough to just use all their campaign funds to fund their lifestyle, which it appears that she's getting significant funds from her own campaign. And I don't know, if somebody's filed a complaint on that yet or not. But I don't know that the Ethics Commission has ever considered that question. But it seems.
So let me ask you this.
I would not advise anyone to do what she's apparently doing.
If Brian Hauswirth decides to run for office.
No.
Okay, next.
That was so fast.
If John Marsh decides to run for office,
Hypothetically.
Okay, and he has a campaign war chest.
Right.
And he takes a commercial flight to go somewhere to the campaign committee for the Republican National Campaign Committee. Okay. Or a CPAC event or something that you could legitimately say is a campaign event. Okay.
Yes.
You're presuming I would run as a Republican here. Okay.
Yes, I am. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, the plot thickens. The plot. Okay. He's running on the Libertarian ticket. and he takes a first class seat rather than at the back of the plane, which yesterday we referenced. That appears to be the safest place to be. Would that be considered a violation because he's self-dealing?
No, I don't think so.
Well, come
Ask
on.
the Speaker of the Missouri House about that.
I don't think so. If he took a flight to the Bahamas that has no legitimate purpose, then he would have. But you've seen people have gotten it, like on the national level. People have received criticism before, and you think about like clothes, like hairstyles. I mean, all of that stuff. It's like, is it personal or is it for the campaign? And so a lot of times for women, people have gone through their campaign reports and picked out. Santos spent his campaign money on OnlyFans and what else? Something crazy.
It's hard to remember all that.
I mean, it's a significant concern when candidates are basically using donors' money to subsidize their personal lifestyle.
And one point too, I think is worth mentioning, and about Jess Piper, she does have a big following, and a lot of her followers are from across the nation. But her district that she ran in is very, that's a very conservative district.
Super red. Yeah.
And
Super
remind
red.
us of the percentage by which she lost.
As I recall, she got about 25% of the vote, and that was, that's in a bright red district, Sam Graves' old district, but Northwest Missouri in general, which is where she's from, is bright red. But when I was working in Carrollton 30 years ago, it was bright blue. Patsy Ann Danner, some of our listeners might remember that name, former state senator, was a Democrat who represented the district. Folks, she was anti-abortion, pro-gun, NRA-backed, a Democratic congresswoman. That would be unheard of today. It just kind of tells you how the times, the times have changed. And I want to make one other point here real quick. This Lincoln Hough that's coming up at 7:30. Yeah. That interview, we are getting a ton of feedback about the Don Mayhew interview we did the other day about changing the name. Essentially, Mayhew did not chastise the senator who's going to be coming up, but certainly chastised the idea of six-laning I-70 across the state. The fact is, the state representative who's on this show, Don Mayhew, said that is the largest boondoggle in state history. So I'm certainly going to follow up with Lincoln Hough to find out what he thinks about that.
Look, I mean, isn't it proper to take a guy with the credentials of an engineer, a survey guy, worked in DOT? I mean, he knows about the business. When he raises an issue about something, I listen carefully. I mean, the guy presumably knows his business. If he doesn't, then that's an argument against licensing in the state of Missouri.
No, and the
Right?
comments we're getting are more not so much about what the comments we're getting for the feedback on Facebook, 93.9 The Eagle Facebook and KWS Facebook, and the page is not so much about that. But they're confused at the approach he's taking about changing the name. And I know he's not being serious. Now we know he doesn't even think the bill's going to pass. But it is out there. It is out there, and he's still got a bill that's going to get a hearing to change the name. So it is interesting. And we'll see if the governor in the state of the state brings up 44.
And my understanding is when they passed this big fix for I-70, they did so in lockstep and in consultation with the current MoDOT leadership and current MoDOT engineers. And so,
Well, but people who aren't aficionados of MoDOT would say, there you go. That makes the story.
wasn't even a guest you could blame it on today. I'd just like to point out.
No.
Anyway, it's no secret that I hate grocery shopping, okay? The Walmart pickup, Hy-Vee pickup, whichever grocery chain you like, the being able to pull up curbside and then put your groceries in your car is my favorite thing ever. I can, throughout the week, just keep my list going on my app and then place the order, and I am forced to plan out better what I buy because I'm not, aimlessly wandering around the store. I feel like I spend less money and it's more intentional, right? And I also don't have to deal with all the people.
Maybe Lincoln Hough should use that method.
There you go.
When they're budgeting.
I think you're wrong, by the way.
What?
I hate grocery pickup. I never do it.
Yeah.
Well,
you like it because it helps you plan. It helps you limit expenditures. You don't do impulse buying, right?
yeah, and
Okay.
I also don't have to deal with large masses of people while
But
I'm
you
trying
have
to grocery shop.
deal with someone else picking out your groceries and giving you like bad fruit, or like you got like Disney shaped macaroni and cheese, like kid macaroni and cheese.
It was unicorn shapes, thank you.
And I've been there where you're like, I want some bananas, and you either get like one banana or you get like 72 bananas.
Well, that's user error because
think
you
so.
type in how many you want.
So there's a new solution coming your way?
Well, not here, but I'm excited that it might be here someday. Dallas-Fort Worth area, Walmart has announced that they will be doing drone grocery deliveries.
Creepy.
Which I feel like we've heard about from a couple other companies, maybe like Amazon. But Walmart is saying that 1.8 million people in the Dallas-Fort Worth area will be eligible for this service. And they say that deliveries can happen in as fast as 10 minutes. But they're basically promising in 30 minutes or less that your groceries would show up at your door delivered by a little drone.
You know the best part of a drone delivery? I wouldn't feel any tension about whether or not to tip the delivery person.
Yes, good point. But
That would be How you doing, Stephanie, with your big hat there?
It's
Your
not a big
sky
hat. It's a big sky
It's a
hat.
big trucker hat, you said.
Okay.
We're wearing hats this morning. John has his hat on, and
Backwards.
I don't. Backwards, yeah.
Oh, boy.
And Hannah does. I don't know if Senator Lincoln Hough, who is of course, the chair of the Appropriations Committee, I don't know if he has his hat on this morning. But how you doing, Senator Hough? Good to make acquaintance virtually.
Yeah, Randy, so I do have a hat on. It's a Schrabel fertilizer company. I raise cattle down here in southwest Missouri. And so these guys, we're busy when I need to be spreading fertilizer on fields. We're busy in Jeff City, and they started a couple of years ago taking care of all that for me, and they do an awesome job. So there's a shout out to them. And welcome to you.
Yeah, thank you.
I think everybody knows it, but you had big shoes to fill, and I think so far so good. So
well,
congrats.
thank you. Yeah, actually, big flip-flops to fill, and I'm still debating whether or not I should buy a pair or not. I just don't know.
And Senator Hough did tell me that this was the most exciting part of his pre-8 a.m. day. So I'm counting that as a win.
So, Senator Hough, first of all, we were at the. I'm sorry we didn't get to shake hands and meet you at the governor's prayer breakfast on Thursday, but you were talking about spreading fertilizer. There's a lot of fertilizer that started spreading around the Senate floor. Metaphorically on Thursday. Wow, it got off to some fireworks.
I joke with people a lot. I've got two jobs, and I love them both, and they're both oddly similar.
A lot of that ammonium nitrate from a different source going on the Senate floor. Well, let's get down to some business. I know that your budget priorities include mental health services and some real, important things, and we'll get to those. But I guess the overarching question is, man, are you just going to be beating, and anyone who wants to get anything done, beating their heads against the wall this year?
Oh, I hope not, Randy. And it started off with some fireworks. I like to remind people that we get more done when we get along. Now, government getting a lot of things done, we can argue that that's not always the greatest thing either. So slowing things down and making sure that what we're doing is important to the people that we serve. Great. The thing I could do without is all the kind of personal attacks and the rock throwing back and forth, because I just don't think that's good for anyone. I mean, if you want to go argue a policy position and you want to make your case, and quite frankly, in the Missouri Senate, if you've got yourself and 17 other people that think that's a good idea, you're going to get it passed. But if you're in the super minority in that chamber and you've got some, maybe not great ideas, they're probably not going to get done. And that's not a personal attack at anyone. That's just the nature of how that chamber operates.
Senator, we appreciate you joining us. Of course, you chair appropriations, and I would argue, quite frankly, after the pro tem, no offense to the majority leader, Cindy O'Loughlin, who I know is listening, I'd argue appropriations chair is probably the second biggest and most powerful position, because you have a very big perch there along with Cody Smith in the House. I want to ask you about the interview that we had. I hope you had a chance to hear it. The other day with your colleague, a House colleague, Don Mayhew, who chairs House Transportation Accountability. And he has filed a bill to rename I-44 I-70 and I-70 I-44. And the reason he's filed that, and he knows that bill's not going to pass, he's still filing it and he's going to proceed. But on this show, he said two main things. Number one, you were the main focus of the $2.8 billion I-70 plan. He says that expansion on I-70 is this is a direct quote here, sir, the largest boondoggle in state history. And number two, Senator, he said if anything needs to be six-laned, it's I-44 in his district. Senator, your response.
Well, so interesting that someone that, has I-44 in his district would make that case. I mean, you guys know I represent Springfield.
Yes,
I drive on I-44 a lot more than I do I-70, quite frankly. What the representative, I guess, maybe doesn't understand is that I-70 is actually a shovel-ready. Environmental study work's already been done. It's ready to go. The awarding of the first bid, I think, is going to happen by the end of February, starting in Columbia and headed east over to Kingdom City. Mm-hmm. That project's been broken up into 6 different projects to get done over the next half dozen years. Again, it's kind of unfortunate because if you're the chair, I guess, of House Transportation Accountability Committee, you should probably know this stuff. But the environmental study work hasn't even been completed on I-44. And what we did in conjunction with the rebuilding of I-70, which, by the way, is the oldest interstate in this country, it's almost 70 years old itself. What we did is we put $20 million in to complete the environmental study work on I-44, such that by the time that work is done, and by the way, we should have all gotten into apparently the environmental study work on highways, because I don't know why in the world it would cost $20 million to get that done, but that's the price tag. When I-70 is complete, if we're in a financial position, it'll be long after I'm out of the Senate Appropriations role, but if we're in a position, we then can start working on I-44. And again, to the representative, I would say there are sections of I-44 that if he'll keep his powder dry, I'd like to start working on. We put some sections in the budget last year at the behest of some House members. And ultimately, the governor vetoed that, balancing his priorities in the budget with his red pen. But there's nothing to say that we can't take some of the portions of I-44 that are ready and start working on. The other thing I'd remind the representative is that I-44 was never going to get done in totality as long as we were spending between $80 and $110 million a year doing maintenance on 70. That's a little secret not a lot of people know. MoDOT, and you guys see it because you're in Columbia, and I think you're driving on 70 all the time. There's construction going on 70 all the time. But, folks, it's patchwork. It's just getting this section done and redoing a small section here and there. I-70 is a major thoroughfare, not just through Missouri, but through the whole Midwest. And when we talk to, shipping companies, quite frankly, who say we try to avoid that section of interstate highway through the Midwest, that's a problem. And it's a problem for the rural parts of our communities in Missouri that are getting those, we call them farm to market roads, down to the feeders that feed into I-70. And then there's traffic jams on I-70. So it needed to be a priority. I'm glad that we put a plan together. The idea that it's the biggest boondoggle in the state's history is, hilarious to me because the projects are just now getting started. So it's kind of hard to say that it's not working when we're just now getting started on it. But I have the utmost confidence that in the next 5, 6, 7 years, the citizens of this state are going to be excited about what we've done there. And quite frankly, guys, that's what Republicans ought to be doing. We ought to get back to actually doing the work that our citizens, that our communities depend on, and stop this kind of nonsensical infighting about, who's more this or more that. I was listening to your show the other day, and, you guys have made mentions of communities that used to be represented by Democrats, all over the state. And I always use Jefferson County.
Yep.
Jeff County used to have Democrats from the state level down to the local county level, and now they're all Republicans because the Democrats did what the Republicans are doing to each other now, and I just call it the cannibalization of the party, and it's unfortunate, but maybe it's just a sign of the times of where we are right now.
And they're all pro-labor over there still, but they're very conservative. I just point out to listeners that, Mr. Chairman, the representative who made those comments about your bill is a Republican. You're a Republican. I want to clarify that, but I sense frustration in your voice. I sense frustration with what he said on this show.
Well, it's frustration. It's frustration in not being able to move past maybe a priority that he had that he didn't get done and come in with a workable solution, right? Instead of coming over to the Senate and working with the second floor, the governor and the administration down there, you have someone who apparently just wants to complain. And again, I don't want to sit here, Randy. I don't want to sit here and John. I don't want to sit here and throw rocks at a Republican colleague. I'm sure he has a reason to say and think what he wants, but at the end of the day, we are better as a party, we're better as a state, we're better as a people when we can find commonality and common ground and work towards those priorities. Look, we came into a special session a year and a half ago when the governor called us back to work on an ag bill and a tax cut, and we cut over $1 billion in individual income tax in this state, and it's like people don't even remember that now. Like I've got Republican colleagues standing up on the Senate floor saying, we've got to cut taxes. We need to cut taxes. Senator Luetkemeyer cut $320 million worth of taxes for everyone who receives a Social Security check in this state last year. So in the last 18 months, we've cut almost $1.5 billion in taxes and made investments in our infrastructure. Like there's a lot of successes that I think we can, be proud of. And too oftentimes, I think people get hung up with, well, I didn't get this one thing or something else, and they get frustrated. So it's, I try to focus on the positive things that we're doing.
That's Senator Lincoln Hough, chair of the Appropriations Committee here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
Senator, do you see a replay of what happened a couple sessions ago with the federal reimbursement allowance and the conservative caucus, and they got all tied up with the whole angle of Planned Parenthood and Medicaid and all that? Do you see that battle returning this session?
Oh, I'm sure we'll have a discussion about it. We've got a hearing on that bill in my Appropriations Committee next week. Probably gets on the floor, fairly early in session, because I think most everyone understands that when you have a little more than a $4 billion program in this state, we need to figure out a way to fund it and receive those dollars from the feds. I did a little checking because, people, and look, the nonsense at Planned Parenthood needs to stop. I don't talk to a colleague who doesn't agree with that. This, the video footage that gets circulated about, young women, without their parents' knowledge being, expedited to another state to have some horrendous thing done. Like, I don't agree with any of that. That needs to be taken care of, and I wholeheartedly will support the efforts to do that. That being said, the FRA, the Federal Reimbursement Allowance, does not directly flow to any Planned Parenthood provider in this state. This goes to our hospitals, it goes to nursing homes, it goes to pharmacies to, quite frankly, pay for medical care for, a poor population. So I would hope that my colleagues can understand that and get past that and work towards what we need to do to fix the Planned Parenthood problems with other legislation. Absolutely.
I mean, it's my understanding they don't participate in that. That's a tax that hospitals impose on themselves to maximize matching funds from the feds, and then it gets redistributed to serve the underserved, period. It has nothing to do with Planned Parenthood.
Correct.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, yesterday, Bill Eigel took to Twitter to talk about a vote that was taken in the Senate on a rule change. He wanted omnibus bills to have to sit for 2 days and pointed out, well, there are some people who said they voted last year on bills that they never even read. So any comments on that proposed and defeat of the... But then another question related to omnibus bills, because the Missouri Supreme Court also recently struck down a bill. So a comment... on the rule change, and then has there been any discussion amongst the senators, hey, we've got to be careful on these omnibus bills because we don't want our legislation struck down?
Sure. Yeah, so the first part of that is almost hysterical, because Senator Eigel actually admitted that he has voted on bills that he's not read, okay? And so he's, I guess, trying to come up with a creative way to not have to really do his homework and have something sit, outside of the chamber for, he started with 3 days, went back to, I think, 24 hours or a legislative day. My real opinion about this is that if anyone in the Missouri Senate wants to walk out on the floor at any time and say, wait a minute, I want to walk through this legislation. I want to walk through this line by line. I've had bills on the floor that colleagues, when you believe all the negotiating is done, colleagues will stand up and they will say, hang on, Senator, let's go through this. And you know what my response is? We should, and I'm happy to do that. The most open and honest and transparent in front of God and everyone way to pass laws is like that, open, in the chamber, on the floor, with the sponsor and any and all interested parties, asking any and all questions as that thing moves through the process. I mean, Senator Koenig is kind of the king, in my opinion, of negotiating. I mean, he did the Wayfair legislation, internet sales tax collection, which he worked on for years. But he is, I would describe him as the king of negotiating and working with others to come up with a workable solution on a lot of fronts, right? And oftentimes his bills get big. But you know what? Andrew, I'll call him Andrew, Senator Koenig, will walk out on the floor and he'll stand there and he'll explain to anyone what's in it. And that's how the Senate's supposed to work. In my opinion, this rule change that Senator Eigel was proposing is just a lazy way for him to not have to do his homework.
All right. Well, clearly some battle lines are drawn. Clearly, you have a lot of rationale and a lot of clear explanations for why you think and do the things you do. I like what I'm hearing on our first encounter here as a host and guest. Why don't I propose this? Why don't we have Lincoln Days more often than just in March? Why don't we have Lincoln Days periodically? Let's just do a regular Lincoln Days thing here. What do you say?
I'd be more than happy to get on with you guys anytime. You know, the second part of that question that you guys asked about the omnibus bills, if more legislation moved through the Senate,
taco shop in Queens. So they went to the video and they sent it out to the media, showed the guy wearing brightly colored briefs with a large white letter R in the year 1990 in yellow below his sagging jeans. The 30-year-old suspect caught at his home in Queens, and they say he was not wearing
and the Eagle as well. Along with Stephanie, how you doing?
Great.
And John, everything good?
Doing good.
Hannah's over there, and she's still chastising me because we ran late with Senator Lincoln Hough. But now that we're going to talk with Travis Fitzwater now, Senator Travis Fitzwater from District 10, who I got to meet in person at the governor's breakfast last week, and we wanted to spend more time with you, Travis. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, glad to do it.
Hey, some things were sorted out. There was a little tit for tat back and forth here on the show in the last few days. This morning, Lincoln Hough answered some questions that Representative Mayhew had raised about his bill, through his bill, about why aren't we doing more at 44. And I didn't know that there was funding in sort of the preliminary work for 44 that was in the bill, the I-70 bill. That was news to me.
Yeah, there's a lot of money being spent on infrastructure across Missouri.
And you're the chair of the Transportation Infrastructure and Public Safety Committee. We have a lot to talk about because I want to try to unpack further something that you talked with us about at the breakfast, and we ran out of time, but a very interesting proposition to sort of thinking about redistricting and making more sense with getting legislation done. But as it regards to this, Representative Mayhew said, well, this is going to be a big boondoggle. And I think he just meant, hey, big government projects tend to run over budget and there's not watchdogs. What kind of watchdog is there, or watchdogs are there incorporated into the I-70 project?
Well, first of all, appropriations. You don't appropriate money if you feel the departments aren't doing their job the way they should be. So I think there's been some pushback on that. And Don has certainly been an advocate for providing accountability to bureaucracies. If there's one thing he's good at, it's really that. And he was just in my office the other day. We had a great conversation. I think it remains to be seen if it's going to be a boondoggle. I mean, we wouldn't put $2.8 billion in the budget to expand I-70 if we thought it wasn't going to be well used to expand that artery of our state. So I probably disagree with him on how that's going to function. I've met with the director of MoDOT several times. The way they're doing the bonding, they're going to save us money. So I think thus far, there's not really a lot of shovels in the ground quite yet because it's so new. But thus far, I think we're off to a good start on that project.
Travis, talk to us about the debate we could see about changes over child abuse claims.
Well, there's a lot in that space. My wife's a licensed professional counselor, and we have dealt, not only does she work with foster care and adoptive kids, but the amount of calls I've gotten since I've been a senator about foster care issues are pretty high. And so we have a system in the state of Missouri that's just not taking care of kids well. And so I have a bill to try to reform the foster care system. I hope we can get some movement on that this year. If we're doing anything in the legislature beyond what we're constitutionally required to do, which is budgeting, it ought to be fighting for kids.
Yeah. And I know that Senator Hough, one of his legislative priorities is about mental health. And as we see just outrageous rates, just escalating rates of mental health problems, anxiety and depression in our teens, maybe having to do with the proliferation and addiction to social media. Who knows where it comes from? But boy, we just don't have enough resources to deal with that. Can we pivot a little bit to the discussion about redistricting and representatives, districts within Senate districts? Go through that once more for those that didn't hear it last Thursday.
Yeah, so I've had a resolution that I filed several times, and I filed it again as a senator this year that would reduce the size of the legislature because we have one of the largest in the country, and I don't think it's necessary to have that many. I filed it as a House member because I was frustrated with the how little influence each representative had in the midst of a Senate that was not functioning with supermajorities of Republicans, which remains true today, by the way. And so my idea was that we reduce the size, take the House down a little bit, but those House districts would be drawn within a Senate district. So you'd have more influence over senators. So as it is today, you may have 2 or 3 senators that you represent in a single House district, even though those Senate districts are 4 or 5 times larger. So I think that's one of the pieces where I'm just trying to give each individual member of the House a little bit more authority over the process and try to get give them opportunity to have their senator listen to them first and foremost, and then secondly, I think the districts are too small, and this reduces the size of the government. There's a lot in there that's good, I believe.
Yeah, I want to point out two things, Senator. I appreciate it. We've had a lot of interest in the interview that we did on Wake Up from the Governor's Prayer Breakfast on this bill, 939theeagle.com. A lot of people weighing in on it, to say the least. I want to point out two reactions we got to the story, and I want to clarify one thing about it. Number one, Jess Piper, who is a former candidate for office, she responded to my story, and I think she was talking to another person, but said she basically thinks they could target Dems, but we could point out these changes would not take effect until 2033, so no one in there right now would be targeted. It's a current House member. They'd be term limited out by then if they've served even their entire 8 years. And then we had a Republican who responded to the story, your former colleague Don Rohn, and he said basically, Senator, that you never filed any bill like this when you were a House member. And I wrote back to him and said, yes, he did. You filed two bills that were very similar to this. So I definitely want to point that out. There's another provision is part of this, and that would change the term limits for members of the General Assembly. And that hasn't gotten any focus, even though I did write about it in my story. Is there any traction for that? In other words, instead of doing 8 and 8 or up to 8 and 8, you could do 16 years. For instance, somebody could do eight terms in the House if they wanted to under your provision. Yeah, so that's a pretty significant change too, and I think the reasoning for that, and I don't think, I know because it's my bill, but I talked to Senator Eigel before you had him on the show last week about this because he's a fan of this legislation, and I think in Jefferson City, because of the bureaucracy and the lobbyists being able to wait you out, 8 years is not a long time in this building. I've found that out myself. I've been here for 9 years. It's flown by. And, the people, once you get your feet under yourself in this building and figure out what's going on and what budget line items go where and where the money's going and what departments are what and who's leading what, by the time you figure that out, you're termed out. And so your ability to really reform government or fight with bureaucracies or with lobbyists or whatever is limited based on the institutional knowledge that's lost every single election cycle from term limits. So this just expands it a little bit. I think 8 years is a little restrictive. We're still keeping the 16 years total, and you can serve in any chamber, but only for 16 years. And I think that's a reasonable change that Missourians ought to have an opportunity to consider.
Now, let's talk about Congressional District 3. Last week, we got a big announcement, the retirement of Blaine Luetkemeyer. Your name, I think, is on the list of not in, but not necessarily out. I think the list that I saw said you have been mentioned, and certainly your district sets you up well within Congressional District 3. So can you tell us anything about whether you're still considering it or not? And then also talk about, the district is so broad, and I think I heard from Congressman Luetkemeyer himself that he would prefer, I think, someone from mid-Missouri as opposed to, closer into St. Louis. What are your thoughts on that? Yeah, well, there's several things there. First of all, Congressman Luetkemeyer has been a great friend in his time in the Congress. I'm so thankful he's been there. And not only that he's taken my phone calls and he's fought for our district. I think one thing he said on an interview the other day is the amount of constituent services they focused on during a dysfunctional Congress really, really went to bat for their people. And I think that was such a blessing to our district. And that means a lot to a lot of people in my community. And we are seriously considering running for it. These opportunities don't come very often. My Senate district's in the heart of this district. And so I think it'd be, I don't think it'd be smart for us to not take time and talk about this, my wife and I and our kids, and think through whether this is the right time for us to step up. But we also have a big job to do in the Senate. So there's a lot to consider, and it's taken us some time, but we are seriously considering running for it. That is, I think having a mid-Missouri candidate is also a priority for a lot of us as well. That's Senator Travis Fitzwater, who joins us on Wake Up Mid-Missouri this morning.
Travis, cycling back to your comments about cutting the number of lawmakers in Missouri, you know as well as anybody, Jefferson City's a company town. When people, primarily state government employees, hear somebody talk about cutting whatever at the Capitol, they worry about losing their jobs, whether they're administrative staff or work for the House or Senate or whatever. Maybe assurances to those folks.
I think reducing the size of the legislature means that we can probably have a few more professional staff on hand. And I think we lose the ability to have the resources we need to make good decisions by cutting too far on the staff in the building. Those are the folks that we lean on, that we should be leaning on to help us think through what we're doing, research what other states are doing, if what we're taking on is effective or not. So I think there's an opportunity to maybe expand staff as a result of reducing the size of the legislature. But that remains to be seen. I think we have to have the discussion first and figure out if we can even get this to the legislature and give Missourians the opportunity to vote on it.
Senator Fitzwater, since you have a lot to do with the infrastructure issues, what about rocked roads in Missouri? I have a peculiar connection with those. People in my area on my rocked road and my farm in Macon have to contribute to the local coffers to get their roads rocked a little bit more. Have to throw into the county till now and then and get a little more rock. I mean, boy, we're talking about I-70, but a lot of people drive rocked roads. These county roads. Is that absolutely separate from state governance and funding or not?
Well, I think it all correlates, but we're also giving a lot to the government in several different areas. We property taxes, sales taxes, across the personal and real estate. I mean, we give a lot. I think there's a lot to figure out how to take care of those gravel roads. And my in-laws have a farm in Macon as well, and so know plenty about dirt roads. There's plenty of them in Callaway County as well. And I think the county commissioners do the best they can with the resources they have. And I think it may not be perfect, but the system we have set up is I think in that way has served us extremely well.
Well, I'm going to make a request that we think about some. Those are roads that Missouri citizens travel, and if you looked at the total mileage, I don't know. Maybe it's something we should consider. Maybe the system isn't engineered just right.
A lot of the letter roads are actually maintained by the state right now.
We have a huge system too, so it's really tricky when we get down to that level because there's so many. If you look at the miles that we have to maintain, it's pretty significant considering what we're surrounded by.
Yeah, I hear you. Hey, well, listen, we'll keep watching your I imagine prayerful consideration of whether or not to run for CD3. Hey, what do you say? You have so many contacts here at Wake Up Mid-Missouri. If and when that announcement's made, you would have an open invitation. I would bump, if we had an interview with Donald Trump, if you would announce on this program.
Well, we would never ask you to bump Donald Trump, but maybe Lincoln Hough. We'd ask you to bump him.
Will you do that?
He'd be so mad at me, and I think that would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, you mean he'd step away on his very own Lincoln days here on the program? Yeah, okay.
No, he'd be very upset with me, and that would be great entertainment for me.
Hey, well, I hope you'll let us know as soon as you make the decision. We'll get you on right away. All right.
Sounds good.
Hey, thanks a lot. Good luck today in the Senate. All right.
Thanks.
NASDAQ just barely positive, the S&P and Dow just barely in the negative. But I'm back on my usual shtick, which is my Elon Musk fangirling.
Oh boy. I
boy.
don't know if Randy's been introduced to the fangirling of Elon.
Yeah, I've heard a little bit about it. Yep.
I just love Elon. I mean, he can really do virtually no wrong in my book. I guess I'm not super excited. Did you hear he's going to give Don Lemon his own program on X?
No.
So just like Tucker on X, or it used to be Tucker on Twitter, but now Tucker on X, Don Lemon is coming back, and Elon's been retweeting some of his stuff. I'm not in favor of that move, but as far as increasing free speech and letting whoever they want to say whatever they want on Twitter, I'm all about that.
It's about the money.
It probably is.
Lemon's charging a fee. Well, he'll do it for free for a while. Then he'll get enough listeners that then he can do a paywall, and then he'll have to pay Elon.
But speaking of the money,
it's about the money.
Elon is going to launch payments through X here shortly. It's supposed to be available sometime in 2024, and you're going to be able to use X just kind of like you use Venmo or PayPal and pay each other through the app. I think it's a smart move. I think I use Twitter all the time. I don't like having to go to a different app to pay my friends for whatever. I have a lot of contacts on Twitter already. And so I think it's smart. And now Facebook has tried this before, and they actually had like their own payments thing that went, I think, by the wayside. I think you can still technically pay through Facebook. But I don't use it as much. So my question is, will this payments thing take off for Twitter, even though other social media apps haven't been able to do it?
I don't understand the paying friends thing.
Because you're old enough that you still use cash, Randy.
No, if we're out...
I love Venmo.
If we're out with a group of people, we just tell the waitress to split the check.
A lot of places won't do that anymore.
Well, then I buy you for the lunch this time and you buy next time. And if we eat at a fancier place this time we're friends. It's not transactional. We're friends, not transactional.
Well, but I mean, sometimes, like I was telling you, I recently bought some pretty expensive tickets, especially like concert tickets or show tickets. And usually you want to sit together. So you buy the big lot and then you split it up. But yeah, no, I think it's a smart move for Elon. And he basically said, look, and he's also launching a lot of video properties on Twitter. And so I think whereas, when he first bought Twitter, we heard this is the end of Twitter and everyone's going to leave and, no more Twitter. I think, 2024 is going to be Twitter's best year yet.
Well, he's got a lot of ground to gain, right? I mean, he's got to make up. He lost a lot of advertisers.
But I think he's going to be great.
Yeah. Well, he's an entrepreneur, no doubt about it. And he's an innovator. That's for definitely sure. We're going to check in with Anthony. the storm was mostly a dud. I mean, the next morning was worse. But up north, I didn't realize it. I mean, in the northern parts of our listening area, it was a big deal.
So now, because you
Power
were
out.
affected by it,
No.
it's no longer a dud.
I happen to be affected, but that really brought it to my mind just how severe it was.
Yeah.
And people are now PTSDing, because I'm getting texts from neighbors and from people up in the Moberly, Macon, Central, other areas going like, whoa, hey, we're bracing for another one. Like, you've already slapped the dog once and you go to pet him and he's, oh, yeah, you're going to hit me or pet me. So I thought we'd check in with Tony Lupo to see if we're up for, a double whammy here from this polar vortex. Those are my words, not yours, Tony. Welcome to the program.
Well, thank you, Randy. We're ready to talk about this next storm, and it may be a replay of the first one. It's following a very similar path. I think the difference with this one is that it's supposed to develop more rapidly than the one we had earlier this week, and it's going to be a stronger bomb, if you will.
Okay, we were on the fringe, right here in sort of the I-70, I would say right along I-70, there was sort of a dividing line between worse or better, outcomes. And it was that swirling. If you looked at it on the radar, it just was swirling like a snow tornado. It was the darndest thing. Are we looking at that again?
Oh, yeah. You'll see the same thing again. And those kind of signatures are not all that uncommon, because within these larger circulations, you can have smaller circulations, and they'll show up on radar quite nicely now. But this storm is going to be much a replay of the last one. We'll have the wind, probably a little more wind, and then with the cold air that's coming in behind it, when the changeover comes, it's going to be more abrupt. It's going to be very noticeable.
Yep. Yeah, Tony, I want to point out that I communicated with Michelle Baumstark, the CPS spokesperson, and she was in a meeting with Dr. Yearwood and their folks. They were actually talking about this very issue, because they got to make a decision probably tonight or tomorrow about what's going to happen, and the models obviously have changed. I talked to the National Weather Service, Chris Kimball, and he is going with, and again, these models keep changing. Right now, 1 to 3 inches of snow. Let's stay starting tomorrow at about noon in snowing on and off through the late afternoon, early evening. What do you agree with that? Are your models showing 1 to 3, and is your time frame matching up with that?
Well, that's the thing. There are about 3 or 4 models that they use, and the National Weather Service seems to be gravitating toward one that puts the changeover a little later, toward noon, maybe even into the afternoon. Some of the models have the changeover happening as early as 9 a.m. So depending on when that changeover comes. And another thing about these models is that with the last storm during the weekend, those models brought the snow ever further north and then reversed course on Monday morning before things got started up. So that's what I'm watching for now. I'm hoping that the models don't do that again, but they tend to repeat these behaviors during certain times.
Yeah, and they're also telling me that you're going to see thunder and hear thunder tonight in Columbia, Jefferson City, in mid-Missouri. They don't believe they're going to be anything severe, but that timing, I think, is going to be key, because we've got schools. A lot of these schools don't start until 8:55, 9 o'clock, and if we've got that thing coming down, it's going to come down fast. We could have some problems. And snowing, when do you see the snow leaving the area, Tony?
Well, the snow should leave the area probably after dark, probably around 9, 10 o'clock at night. Wow. That's when folks see it leaving. A lot of times what happens is you get some of these snow showers and they're slow to taper off, but that's when things should finally stop. But after that, it's cold.
Yeah. Thank you, Tony.
Yeah, Tony, talk to us about that a little bit. The jet stream playing a role in bringing our cold, unseasonably cold weather here over the weekend and into the first of the week.
Yes, absolutely. What you have going on and this is happening beyond North America, is you've got two very strong ridges, one in the Atlantic, one in the Pacific, and what those combined ridges do is they kind of knock the cold air that's sitting in the Arctic down further into Canada and the United States. It's like a pincer, and it's got North America caught in the middle.
Okay, so that's one element of the weather grabbing another and engulfing. I like all these it's like some kind of video game you're describing here, Tony. Well, we'll have to keep an eye on it. Thanks for being with us. Hey, if anything really catches just a total, right-hand turn when you thought things were going left or otherwise, let us know, okay?
Okay, will do.
Thanks, Tony. Appreciate it. Anthony Tony Lupo.
Yeah, I think what he just summed up there is exactly the situation. It's tough to write this. I'm actually trying to get a website story up right now with a new map. We've got 3, maybe 4 different models. The National Weather Service is going with 1 to 3. But just before that, they had one going 2 to 8 inches. And his time frame does not match up with their time frame. And John Ross at Channels, and I'm not trying to point out who, I'm simply saying these guys are experts.
It's Battle of the Meteorologists. Come on, let's be honest about it.
It's just they got different models, and it's really hard. And then if that line moves a little bit up or down, that could be a problem.
Now, Brian, we know you don't like to pick losers on Friday, and tomorrow's winners and losers.
Yeah.
So somebody's got to be a loser. If they have differing, somebody's going to win and someone's going to lose. And I expect some names.
Everyone can't get a ribbon now, Brian.
I understand. I will try. In one of these cases, if I remind myself of something I've said that's wrong, I'll give myself a little loser of the week. But it's all good. I do think it is. These are tougher to forecast and even to report on than the spring storms, but we're not under a warning right now. But Baumstark, the fact that she and Yearwood were meeting yesterday, that's the largest district here in mid-Missouri by far. Nothing comes close to Columbia in terms of size. This is going to be a tough call for them tomorrow.
Snow's not going to be the big story. My prediction, amateur meteorologist, my prediction is next Monday and Tuesday, we're going to be talking about tremendous civic and health problems related to the cold temperatures.
It's going to be bad. Cold's going to be brutal.
That's going to last brutal sub-zero temperatures are going to be
next week for sure.
Yeah.
It's like when your eyeballs feel like they're freezing when you walk outside, and it's
just awful.
Cold.
You can't.
Your eyes instantly start watering when the wind hits you.
Right, and it's dangerous to be out in that kind of weather if more than 3 or 4 or 5 minutes. So just be careful, prepare. Make sure you have your weighted blanket in the car, right, ladies? Okay. When we come back, it's time for leftovers. I know there's a lot on everyone's plate. I don't know if we'll be able to eat it all, but we'll have to see. Stay tuned. There's a lot to talk about on Leftovers here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri this morning. On the national scene, we really haven't been able to talk much about Hunter's circus parade yesterday. The committee who eventually did pass a resolution of contempt of Congress, he comes in and he's there during the hearing. The Democrats say, let's go for it. What's wrong with you Republicans? And then Nancy Mace, well, she stood up for the strong, independent Republican woman.
Mr. Chairman, Chairman Comer, first of all, my first question is who brought Hunter Biden to be here today? That's my first question. Second question, you are the epitome of white privilege, coming into the Oversight Committee, spitting in our face, ignoring a congressional subpoena to be deposed. What are you afraid of? You have no balls.
Okay, well, she didn't mince any words, did she, Stephanie?
I might have chose different words for an official hearing,
but we're not upset that she chose that one.
John, isn't that the same woman who was late to the prayer breakfast because her
she was getting busy.
boyfriend wanted to
about that.
get jiggy with it? Right? Yeah.
Right.
Legend.
Yeah. Nice, virtuous, high conservative values Republican gal there. I don't
because
know.
virtuous and politician belong in the same sentence.
No, they used to. There used to be some people that at least had some principled behavior. Now, we're in a social media who can get the most attention by being the most outrageous kind of a world. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and we're seeing the same thing. I mean, stunting, at the state legislature and stunting in Congress in D.C.
And Stephanie, just as you were wrapping up with the morning bell, the CPI numbers came out.
Oh yeah, I haven't dug down into them yet.
Up 0.3% month over month. That's December's increase. 3.4% year over year. We hope to talk to someone tomorrow to analyze that because I think we need to unpack that and figure out, is that going to have an impact on a pause in interest rate increases or not?
Well, and Donald Trump basically said we're going to have a recession if he's not elected. Yeah. And I don't know that I disagree with him.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think we've heard the end of this recession talk on the wings of increased inflation and trying to tamp it down. John, apparently the Attorney General got a mysterious white substance coming his way.
Yeah, this dates back to last spring, and we had kind of, a rash of white powders being delivered to state office buildings in Jefferson City. It was back in April. And one was sent to the Broadway State Office building in Jefferson City. They tested that one. 7 CST team from the National Guard, their hazmat unit, tested that. And it turned out to just be coffee creamer. But one sent to the Supreme Court building addressed to Andrew Bailey was tested. And it turned out to be meth.
Gosh, I don't know. I just don't get it. And
he phony return address on it and all, and they couldn't pan it out. And they had another one in October. Something else turned up in the governor's office at the Capitol, which wasn't said to be hazardous.
And isn't it timely that yesterday he was testifying in front of the Mayorkas impeachment hearings, and a lot has to do with border crossings and drug, mainly fentanyl, but still in the broader category of drug running. What's up on your leftover plate, Miss Hannah?
Got some big football news.
Yeah.
Some big names in college football and in the NFL. Nick Saban is retiring. This came out yesterday from his coaching career. He is 72 years old, and he's been with Alabama for 17 seasons. So he announced yesterday that he is going to be retiring. And I haven't seen a lot of details yet, but we saw this morning on Fox News that Bill Belichick and the Patriots are, quote, parting ways. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious to see what comes out of that story.
Apparently he's going to resign. And in the category of, you think journalists, present company excluded, are absolutely hysterical against Donald Trump. The other day when he was in the appellate court, he showed up for that appellate court hearing, and then he held a little news conference after. And a couple of local journalists in New York City outside of the court building were caught, with this audio. Listen.
The worst part is, even if he has his and he's hanging out of it, he'll be on the other side of the field.
I mean, if he's driving, we've got a good shot.
Yeah, if he's driving with the front window open.
Yeah. Or if it's a convertible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking about that.
Yeah. Like if he just pulls up by
Like
himself
JFK.
in a Miata, yeah.
It's like a JFK, a Lincoln. No, a president. Oh. Maybe someone, just like they told JFK, you know what you should do? You should take a convertible. It's so nice out.
These guys are yucking it up, joking about if only he had a convertible and you gave him a convertible, it could be just like
We'd
JFK.
have a clear shot.
I mean, these guys should be drug into court. I mean, this is essentially a felony. I mean, when you threaten someone.
Secret
like
Service takes real dim view of that kind of comment.
these are two journalists, allegedly, that's what was reported.
Well, and even if you don't like Trump, I mean, mentioning JFK and then cackling laughter, I mean, just it's awful. And think about it the other way around. As much as we dog on Biden, right, and think that he's a terrible president, that he's a bumbling idiot, I've not heard any conservative say, "Oh, we should put him in a convertible and just off him." I mean, you just don't hear that from the right. It's just horrifying.
And that video was attributed to AP, but again, this is just this was from the Twitter files. But I mean, certainly anyone, and it was reported to be a couple of journalists that were waiting outside the court building. Anyone who talks that kind of talk, I mean, something needs to give. That is absolutely unacceptable. But it tells you a little bit about where the temperature of the country is.
Yeah, people are angry and they're violent right now. There's a lot of violence in their minds.
Yeah. We got the caucuses coming up in Iowa on Monday. The weather may play some role in that, although we hear that Iowa voters, nothing will stop them. They're as diligent or more than postal workers.
I mean, having lived in Kirksville for a number of years, it's cold up there, and you just kind of deal with it, I think. So I think they're going to the polls. Another big win yesterday, you mentioned the Attorney General was testifying in Congress, but they also got a win out of the 8th Circuit on their China lawsuit. And so the China lawsuit had been dismissed. And when Schmidt first filed the lawsuit against China, folks were really, he caught a lot of grief for that. But the 8th Circuit actually said, you can proceed on one of the claims. And that claim, I think, is that China was hoarding personal PPE, basically. And so I saw the AG's team not only celebrating, their congressional testimony, but also celebrating their win and said, you guys all thought we were wrong on this China thing. And the court just said, we're going to move forward.
I think we have a bunch of interesting developing stories. There's more. We didn't talk about the fact down in Fannie, let's call the whole thing off, Willis down in Fulton County. Okay, so she hires a private attorney who's her romantic love interest, who then takes her on extravagant vacations, spending a lot of the $600,000 and some odd $1,000 that she employed him for. Now, this guy had a couple of meetings, John, in the White House, it's reported.
Yeah, that's the latest we're hearing, isn't it?
And it gets better. She's been been subpoenaed, apparently.
In the divorce trial.
Is that his divorce trial?
Her boyfriend's.
Her boyfriend's divorce trial.
The attorney that she hired.
I mean, how do you spell corruption? This is corruption.
But thank goodness for, I think it's Michael Roman whose lawyers found all this information, because there are so many other defendants in those Georgia cases, and he's the only one who had a team that was able to assemble all of this information and brought it forward. I'm so glad, kudos to them for finding this all out, and now it seems to just be unraveling for her.
I've only got a minute, but I'm going to go there. There's a fire hose of these corruption based on total